It just keeps getting worse for the Chicago White Sox. They get crushed by the Reds, leading to calls for Pedro Grifol's job. And there's more bad news in Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf's quest for a publicly funded stadium to discuss next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of Southside Showdown, part of the Fansided Network. You can check out my written work at southsideshowdown.com. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And hey, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, smash the like button, or write a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. That would be greatly appreciated. You can also follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Locked On Sox. And on today's show, we will go over how the Reds just destroyed the White Sox in a 3-game series and how it is, well, that's a bad look for Pedro Grifol's job security. We'll then pivot to Jerry Reinsdorf's quest for a new stadium funded fully by the taxpayers and the Chicago Sun-Times recent story on the shady background of the majority owner of the land that Jerry wants to build the stadium on. And finally, hey, if Jerry wants any tax dollar assistance, he needs to meet these 4 conditions. But today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right. So, first of all, I think I'm fighting off a cold. So if I sound a little nasally or my throat seems scratchy, I'm taking as much Umca as I can to make sure I last through the week. So hope you can give me a little grace there. You know, we always hate it when that cold comes on and we're like, I gotta take as much medicine as I can. I gotta chug down as much orange juice as I can. And I've been doing that. So, and then for those not able to see on the YouTube, wearing the 1983 White Sox hat today, because I just feel like I got to find some better times because the White Sox were awful this weekend. Nearly unwatchable. The Reds destroyed the White Sox in a 3-game set. The Sox were outscored 27-5. They lost 11-1 on Friday, 5-0 on Saturday, and 11-4 on Sunday. That is not competitive. Okay, we knew this season was going to be terrible. We were prepared for a bad season. But the hope was that they'd at least be competitive in most of these games. And to start the season, they were relatively competitive. This one, they weren't even in it. The closest they got to the Reds to even being a threat of a victory was they made it 4-2 in the bottom of the 4th on Sunday. Otherwise, the Reds jumped on the Sox starting pitchers and just cruised to victory. For example, Chris Flexen, 2 2/3 innings, he gave up 6 runs on 7 hits. Michael Soroka, 5 runs, 5 hits, 4 2/3 innings, 6 walks. The Sox had Garrett Crochet, Jordan Leisure, and Michael Kopech pitch on Saturday and still lost. Those are your 3 best pitchers that you're sending out there. That should be a victory. That should be giving you an opportunity to win. And they lost 5-0. And yes, Garrett Crochet had a big inning, gave up 5 runs in the second, Should have gotten out of it, actually, because they got a couple of those runs on 2 outs, if I recall. The umpire had a different interpretation of the strike zone, but man, Garrett Crochet is fun to watch still. He settled down, cruised along for a couple more innings, just throw strikes. And every pitch is amazing to watch. And also, again, Michael Kopech, he's fun again. And the Sox still could not do anything with their offense. Nick Lodolo struck out 10 in 5 2/3 innings on Saturday. The Sox their offense is terrible. They got 2 hits, 2 on Saturday, 4 on Friday. And then they struck out 12 times on Sunday. Andrew Benintendi, yeah, he's stealing money. The Sox highest paid free agent ever is hitting 145 on the season, and he went 1 for 8. Andrew Vaughn, the guy that they really need to step up now with Luis Robert Jr., Eloy Jimenez, and Yohan Moncada on the IL. Yeah, he went 1 for 12 with a walk. Gavin Sheets didn't even play in a game this weekend. Gotta get those matchups right, according to Pedro. Which brings us to Pedro Grifol. The calls for his job are starting to get louder and louder, whether it's White Sox social media or people calling into the post-game show. And rightfully so. Because CHGO White Sox beat writer Vinny Duber tweeted this out. Ball game. Sox lose 11-4 as Reds complete the sweep. They were outscored 27-5 in the 3-game series. Ugly one today. Sox pitchers walked 8. Sox fielders made 3 errors. Sox allowed 6 stolen bases. They're 2-13, the worst 15-game start to a season in franchise history. It's not like the White Sox haven't been around since 1900. 124 years. This has never happened, and we have seen terrible White Sox teams. The first real season that I could consciously remember was 1989. That was a terrible season. And again, the Sox lost in a way that they've always been losing the last 2 years. And this wasn't supposed to happen. They upgraded the defense. The starting pitching was supposed to be better a little bit. Well, maybe not, because they signed a bunch of guys off the scrap heap. But it was supposed to be enough to keep them in games. Hopefully, you flip Chris Flexen and Michael Soroka. And hopefully, Eric Fetty, who is the Korean League MVP, that success translates over and gives them a chance to win. According to Pedro, they were supposed to be playing fast. The guy made an acronym out of fast, and they're not playing that way. They're not playing fearless and aggressive, or fearless, aggressive, selfless, or technically sound. That was shown. And at some point, yes, there's 26 guys on the roster that have to execute, but a lot of these guys are less than 1 F4 players. They're utility players, and they're basically being asked to be one step up. They're supposed to be grinders. So that means the manager has to make sure they're focused and ready to go, and they're not doing that. This manager is in way over his head, and I think the only way that you can keep this from being a historically bad season is, unfortunately, Pedro's got to go. But will he? Because, again, there was the report in the Chicago Sun-Times a couple weeks back by Bulls beat writer Joe Colley, because Jerry Reinsdorf owns the Bulls, that Jerry knew that they should be that Pedro should be fired last year, but he didn't want to pay him to go away. So we'll see if Jerry wants to pay him to go away. And in speaking of Reinsdorf, we're going to talk about him next. Hey, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. And we've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling a little low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep. You lift your head up and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. The Monopoly you love. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Ooh, that sounds fun. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. It's Locked On NFL Mock Draft Live on April 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern, streaming on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel apps. Find the Ultimate 6-episode series on April 17th at 7 Eastern to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking on every NFL franchise with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft on April 17th at 7 Eastern, streaming live on Locked On Sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. And so I got to get a sip of coffee here. Again, went with the Collectivo Blue Healer. Get that grounded up at the grocery store. So Jerry Reinsdorf is hoping to get a new ballpark on a vacant piece of land on the South Loop known as the 78. It's called the 78 because once developed, it'll be the 78th neighborhood in Chicago. And Jerry's basically hoping that you, the taxpayer, specifically those of if you're listening in Illinois and live in, work in the Chicagoland area or in Illinois, he wants you to pay 1.9 billion for his new stadium. Basically, how I interpret it, he wants the bonds that were used to build Guaranteed Rate Field, at the time New Comiskey, and then eventually the bonds that were used to renovate Soldier Field to just basically be extended out. And then there's the hotel tax that's supposed to cover it. Well, that's not a great look to begin with when most teams are at least putting up some, if not all, of the money to build the stadium. And then the Chicago Sun-Times did a story on Friday, basically a blatant act of journalism on the background of the majority owner of the land. And it is not a good look for the White Sox. The land is owned by an Iraqi billionaire in exile in London, Nadeem Shakir Oji. I tried to look up the pronunciation, and this is the closest I could find. So Tim Novak and Frank Main did the report and found that Oji was denied a visa in 2005 and 2014 by the U.S. State Department. So twice he tried to enter the country for, a longer term, and the U.S. government was like, no. He got the land. He ended up buying it from Tony Rezko, a political fixer for then Governor Rod Blagojevich. And Rezko needed the money to pay for legal fees because he went to, and he eventually did go to prison for a kickback scandal. So now you have ties to Blago, who has a well-documented history of corruption in the state of Illinois. And another political figure that went to prison. And federal officials never said why they denied his visa, but he was convicted by a French court of fraud in an oil scandal. The sentence was suspended. He did serve 2 years in prison after he and 76 others, including Saddam Hussein at the time, a young member of Iraq's Ba'ath Party, according to Main and Novak's article, were convicted of attempting to assassinate Iraq's prime minister in 1959. So you already have ties to Saddam Hussein, although Oji's attorneys say Mr. Oji never met or spoke to Saddam Hussein. He had no business or other relationship. This is a quote. He had no business or other relationship with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was, in fact, responsible for murdering of one of Mr. Oji's brothers, and our client was himself imprisoned, beaten, and tortured by Saddam Hussein's regime, end quote. And then Oji, or Ochi, or again, I tried to look up how to pronounce the man's name. When there was an issue with the tax bill, Related Midwest, who is basically the developer in this and the minority shareholder, reached out to former Chicago Alderman Ed Burke's law office. Yes, Ed Burke, who just was convicted of bribery, racketeering, and conspiracy charges. So you have just, the article did fairly point out that if this all goes through, either the state, the land's either going to be donated, the 10 acres to build on the stadium. It's either going to be donated or bought. So it's not going to be that the Sox stadium is on a piece of land owned by an Iraqi billionaire who may or may not have ties to Saddam Hussein. The man denies it. Okay. But that's still not a great look. And then on top of that, you have 3 more corrupt politicians with ties to the guy that owns this land. And then Crane's Justin Lawrence, he reported that Brandon Johnson's administration is holding discussions with the Bears, who are also trying to get a new stadium, and the Sox over the course of the next couple of weeks about financing the stadium. And one of the things discussed was the using some of the city's amusement tax, 9%, towards funding the idea. Yeah, that got shot down. So this just keeps looking worse and worse for Jerry. And we're going to address the 3, maybe 4 conditions that Jerry really needs to meet if there's even supposed to be any public money, and I mean any. And I know there's people that are like, how can you dare discuss it? Hey, there's some infrastructure that is usually goes along in stadiums that the public usually covers. So we'll discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. This show couldn't exist without the help of sponsors like Yahoo Finance. So let's get straight to the point. You want to grow your portfolio to deal with rising costs of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and financial freedom, right? I know I do. And with Yahoo Finance, you can get access to news, data, and tools that you need to help reach that financial freedom. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and the data you need in one place. They're the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage account for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. All right. Well, if you've been listening to me this long, I really appreciate it. Like I said earlier, I'm trying to fight off a cold. So I also really appreciate you that I sound like this. Hi, what's going on? I'm sorry. I think I picked it up at going to a restaurant over the weekend, and I hope you had a great weekend. Yeah, I did some stuff with the family. Took my daughter to this place called Organ Piper Pizza, and it's a place where a guy plays the organ. You can request songs. She loves it. I think that's where I picked up a cold, or I'm fighting off one. So, anyways, we talked about Pedro Grifol probably not making it through the month, or he shouldn't. We then discussed the terrible look that is the Jerry Reinsdorf's quest for a new stadium. Just keeps getting worse and worse every day. But what's really worse is, again, he wants taxpayers to fully fund this new stadium project. And this is Jerry's MO. He did this back in the late 80s to get what is now guaranteed rate field. He didn't use public money, though, to build the United Center for the Chicago Bulls. Now, the difference was he had Michael Jordan drawing in crowds every night, and he had the Chicago Blackhawks to help pay for half the mortgage. So this is entirely Jerry's money, who Forbes estimates Jerry is worth over $2 billion. Now, a lot of that is probably the valuation of the Sox and the Bulls. But still, the man is a billionaire, and he wants you, the taxpayer of Illinois, to pony up an estimated $1.9 billion. The Bears, at least, are willing to commit $2 billion. So I came up with some ideas that, because again, whether you believe that even some money should go to these stadiums or not, it's probably gonna, the money's gonna end up getting there, just because these guys write donation checks. Not saying that there's quid pro quos, but you want to follow the money. For example, the Milwaukee Brewers just got some money to renovate American Family Field. And then the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel reported a couple of months later that, a couple of Brewers executives donated to a couple of political funds. Now, maybe they just happen to support this candidate and they live in their district. I don't know. But usually, money talks. So here's what Jerry needs to do. If I were a politician, even consider signing off on even some assistance. First, you got to pony up the bulk of the money. Second, you got to put a retractable roof on this thing. Guarantee people that they will get baseball every time there's a game. Also, that way, this thing can be used year round. Because right now, his project that he wants you to pay for is just going to be for baseball. And you could say, well, the concerts get played at Wrigley Field anyway. Well, now with a retractable roof, maybe they go to the 78. Also, you got to contribute to renovating Guaranteed Rate Field into the rumored soccer stadium for the Fire and the Red Stars, because that is the talk, that the Fire and the Red Stars would then play at a renovated Guaranteed Rate Field. And then finally, if you're going to talk about all this economic impact and all this job growth, you got to actually bring in one or two Fortune 500s to help anchor the rest of that property. Because they keep talking about this job growth, but a lot of the jobs it's restaurant, which there's nothing wrong with that, with bartenders and waitresses and small business. There's nothing wrong with that. And I get the shopping. But that's not exactly like bringing in this huge economic impact. You want to bring in economic impact? Get a company like Amazon, who once thought about that land as their secondary headquarters. Get that. Bring in a company like that. And that's going to be a challenge in today's work environment where most companies are working virtual, are starting to entertain virtual. But bring in a company that's going to build that office building, that's going to anchor help anchor your property. That's going to truly bring jobs, at least in my opinion. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Before I go, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Well, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to discuss exactly what are the White Sox doing with this roster. And then please let me know your thoughts on today's topics regarding if Pedro Grifol is going to make it through this month and the debacle that is the White Sox Stadium. You can give me those comments either on Twitter at ToddJDub or email lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.